Thanks a lot for having me, presenting some of the works we've been doing from Zaha Architects. I'll get back to the topic of today's presentation, but maybe a short introduction. We are a London-based practice. We have presences in North America, Asia, Middle East, but we are active globally. We have an extensive experience in projects, and our projects are most of the time associated with a very strong design language and a very unique way of responding to the different briefs and the different contexts where we operate. We do a bit of everything. We have, as I said, not only the presence but projects globally, different typologies, mixed use, cultural, transport, offices, hotels, you name it, product design. So we try to engage and bring our expertise and our design in every sort of scale and in every context. We started as a practice working a lot with cultural projects, which is interesting because normally those are the type of projects that you kind of achieve or reach once you have a certain maturity. But as always, Zaha was doing everything in the other way around, or everything different, everything in a unique way. So she started the office practice based on few seminal cultural buildings, and I'll show you some of them after. We do hospitality and residential projects, educations and sports, arenas, a university campus, and transport, airports, bridges, stations, ferry terminals. And one of the most important projects, and I like to start with this one, it's because the theme was about talking about iconicity or iconic projects. And I don't think that we never start or address a project with the idea of creating something iconic. Somehow the project itself or the solution or the proposal becomes iconic by the way it can generate or affect a wider context, by the way it could uplift the neighboring communities, or the way it could inform the use or the behavior of the people that are using the building. So in that sense, it becomes, or the way it's inserted and responds to a different urban fabric. So the building becomes iconic, its presence becomes iconic, its use and its influence becomes somehow is an effect of becoming an iconic presence in space. But it's never the sort of the driving of the initial sketch of the first idea. So it's not an answer. Somehow it's one of the facets of resolving a project successfully. This project is the Cincinnati Museum. It's our first project in North America. It's quite an old project, but this is the project that gave Zaha Hadid the Pritzker Prize in architecture, the first woman to ever win that recognition. So it is a very important building for us, and of course, his presence in the way it's inserted in the sort of matrix of the urban blocks of Cincinnati made it become a very important cornerstone of the city map. So it became a very iconic sort of presence on the map of the city. Another project, completely different scale. It is also a very strong answer to the heritage building beside. So we always strive to do something which is, it's shown as a design excellency solution, if you want, but is always becoming something which has a very strong presence. This one is our answer to the heritage building that you see there. It's a Serpentine Pavilion in London. And we did the refurbishment of the heritage building. And then we wanted to create something which was very light, extremely different in terms of language, but complementing the heritage building. So in this case, the sort of the iconicity or the design sort of direction has been given by a juxtaposition between the old and the new. This is a tensile fabric, so technically we're talking about a circus tent. It's literally 2 layers of fabric which are held by a series of columns and posts that you can see here, which acts as skylight. So it's a very sort of simple technical solution, but it's a very intriguing one, and it creates a very interesting light answer to a very solid and sort of nested or grounded presence of a heritage building. Talking about iconicity, I guess, that probably fit the brief almost better than anything else. It's a Chanel pavilion. So Chanel, Karl Lagerfeld came to Zaha and said, I need to have a pavilion that I want to showcase all of our most iconic pieces of design. I want you to design it, but it needs to travel in 5 different locations. So it was in Tokyo, New York, Paris, London, and now I think he's actually in Dubai. But this project is basically a temporary pavilion. So what driven the design of this very iconic, if you want, project is actually the fire regulations of 5 different countries. It's the packing and unpacking, let's say, of the building itself into crates. So how to make it more efficient and effective so that you could limit the time of mounting and dismantling, and you could actually save money by engineering how to create this project so that it could be shipped from a continent to the other. So that was actually what was driving the first and initial design sketches for this project. Museum in Rome, it's, again, a very strong presence. It's an interesting project because it's in Rome. It's one of the probably the most difficult contexts to work with. Everything has some sort of heritage. In this case, it's an old series of military barracks that have been transformed into a cultural hub. With a series of projects, we designed the museum. And this project is an answer to, as you can kind of read it through this bird's eye view, this sort of a linearity of the existing military barracks. So we started with that, and then we addressed the project as opening a new square from the top to the bottom of the image for public sort of interference and create a public space that was somehow answering to more than just the function itself of being a museum, a container. So this idea of flow of peoples or connectivity was the driver for this design, which of course becomes a very iconic presence, but is also a result of a different type of answer to a brief. The museum as a experience, a museum as a continuous flows of movement of people. So the building has this idea of a continuous visual connectivity, but is only based on the movement of people inside the space. Another interesting project, Guangzhou Opera House. This project is 2 different concert halls for different. One is I think is a philharmonic concert hall, and the other one is more of a chamber concert hall. And it's 2 programs connected by a single podium. So the way we answered this, in a context which is extremely sort of vertical, the city is sort of a vertical forest of elements, was to actually look into the ground condition, create an elevated landscape, and then nestle these 2 pebbles, which somehow really talks to the waterfront that it's kind of appearing there. So again, the whole idea of creating these 2 iconic jewels came from somehow looking at the immediate presence of the river, the waterfront, and this concept of pebbles nested into a higher ground. Those are some of the shots on the interiors. And those are not renders, those are pictures actually. New York, another interesting project. It's a residential building. It's on the High Line, extremely interesting conditions. You have issues of privacy. You have, and you want to screen that as much as you can. You also have to answer to the Manhattan grid, which is a very strong constraint. So we take the constraint, and that becomes, once again, the driver, or one of the driver, for the design definition of the building. So you can see that we respect this grid, and we respect the sort of presence of the different levels of pedestrian and traffic flow, but we answer to that by creating a dynamic facade that not only create a playful sort of gesture, create a unique design, but is also becoming a way of screening differently the different balconies of the different units so that you get or try to minimize the overlooking opportunities and maximizing the privacy of the different balconies. So that gesture becomes somehow the playfulness, the uniqueness of the project. And as you can see, it's very different from all the other sort of vertical extrusions. So again, try to use the constraint of the context of the brief and make that the ingredient that then develops into a design solution and which then becomes an iconic presence in the site. Same for the Lisa Soho Tower. Again, those are pictures of the building just before the opening. This building is the tallest atrium ever built so far to date in the world. And it's, those are pictures from the opening day. And the reason why there is this tallest atrium is not because we wanted to create something unique. We didn't want to have something, a record of the tallest atrium. It's because below this tower, there is actually a metro line that cuts through. So you couldn't have a central podium. You needed to have two different independent, basically, tower that then we connected with a facade. So again, the constraint of the site, the constraint of the engineering sort of complexity of the metro line going underneath is what generated this extremely powerful design vision. So again, it's an answer to something. It's always something that sort of triggers this idea. And you can see here the way it sort of gets bundled together by this facade, which is actually only flat panels, so it's extremely efficient in the way it's built. So you can see that it's actually a very sort of competitive solution, still for something which is very unique and is something very striking from a design perspective and user experience. Same things, a bit older project, that's in Marseille. I mean, this project is a site which is in the middle of a highway, of two actually different sort of highway system, and the waterfront, which is completely cut out, and it's the Port Authority headquarters. So they wanted, again, something, they own the land, they wanted to use it, they couldn't resolve by themselves how to better use and develop this site. So they came to us and we created this sort of very sort of simple gesture, which is extremely sort of thin in the movement of the direction, but is extremely powerful approaching from the water, because it becomes basically an icon on the old waterfront of Marseille, where there is actually no other high-rise in sight. So again, is the complexity, is the context that generates the design solution and the design quality of the project. Different scale, that's in Hong Kong. It's just completed now, actually, so this picture are not the latest one. But this project is somehow our answer to these extremely sort of bulky and sort of uniform volumes that you see all around in all these new and old towers. We wanted to create something that was somehow at a different texture, at a different scale. So by breaking down in sort of flutes, these sort of vertical cones that are kind of stacking on one another, you create a lot more of a playfulness, a lot more of a scale which is more sort of human-centered or more connected to a human scale rather than a single volume. So again, the answer to the conditions that are present is what drives the design solution. Vauxhall, those are towers we are waiting to start on site. These mixed-use towers, offices, residential, hotels, commercial components. This project is about modularity, so repetition, all these elements that you see on the facade that define something which is a bit more of a grain rather than a normal curtain wall sort of solution. But this is defined by a module, which is the sort of corner condition, that then gets different scales according to the different constraints of the program within, and it creates a very dynamic sort of solution. And it's the same approach that we used for the Mandarin Oriental Tower in Melbourne. And the client came to us and said, I really don't want to do another tower that looks like just all the other towers that you have in the site. They're all very glass, very shiny. They're all very sort of old in the way they look. We want something new. We want something which has a texture that talks to the sort of Baroque influence of some of the oldest area of the style that was used to define the city center of Melbourne and Sydney, which is a lot more on the solid. He has a lot more of a grain. And they wanted to do that. And what we did was literally take that on board and make that a building that looks like it's a material building. It's not a glass building. Still keeping this idea of modular system that can be repeated and can become very efficient. Port House. This is probably one that would suit better the combination of what is iconic or what is something that is on every map of Antwerp now. This is the Port Authority headquarters in Antwerp. We refurbished the existing building, which used to be the old Heritage Port Authority building, and the competition was calling for doubling the area of the offices by not touching the Heritage building. So we literally lifted this jewel on top of the existing building with 2 foot, one outside and one inside in the courtyard, which is now a public open space. And this is becoming now basically the symbol of Antwerp. If you go on their guides, on their city map, this is actually one of the images that they use. And it's something that we're very proud of. But of course, this is a very strong sort of statement. But it's a statement that talks about, you know, the jewel industries, the diamond industries that was typical of the history of the port of Antwerp, but at the same time talks with the sea, the water reflection, how the ripples of the sunlights or the different lights of the port ripples on the water, and that's the same that how the ripples on the building itself. That you can see starts in a sort of very clean sort of cut, and then it becomes a rougher towards the water side. So there is, of course, all of this idea of trying to find things that we can use, that we can implement, constraints, limits, design ambitions, or brief, and how we use that and we make it into a new iconic sort of solution to the problem. We also use more technical things to create iconic design. This building is about sustainability. It's about the first stadium ever built, completely engineered in timber, with CLT solutions, zero carbon footprint, and that was the brief. So that aspect is what drove the design of this building. How do we engineer that? How do we make this possible within the limits of the technical constraints of glue lamp solution or cross-laminated timber solutions? Similar approach on another stadium we have on site in Aarhus in Denmark. This one is about, again, not only sustainability, but it's also about breaking the scale of a building, which is a very sort of, I mean, this is a stadium, it's a very big volume. We wanted to really create something that was fitting within the forest. This verticality of the forest is what inspired the verticality of the facade. And by breaking the facade into these sort of vertical lines, very sort of stylized, almost shape of a tree, we created something that is a lot more compared to a human scale rather than a bigger volume that is extremely overwhelming. So again, the idea of that is permeable through the outside to the inside, and it's really the driver for the whole design solution. Now we get a bit closer to the region. We wanted to create something special for Tallinn. That's the first project we won in the Baltic. Well, technically, actually, no. There is a museum we won in Vilnius before that, but this is the first project that we realized, or we are realizing in the Baltics. It's a master plan for vision for the city of Tallinn, for the waterfront. The Port Authority has 50 hectares of sort of concrete slab. They want to bring the city back to the water and the water back to the city. So we did for them, we created this vision. And again, it's about sort of creating an order, answering the brief, which is how do we bring people back to use this land? And to redevelop that, we want to bring users and new sort of attractors. That's what we call sort of the ingredients needed to reactivate this whole area is really to find users, attractors, and also create a connection of pedestrian and public walkways and connectivity between the waterfront on the top left and the bottom right of the image, which is now uninterrupted. So through these, we just developed an extremely sort of clean and linear solution, which at the same time could become a new city center for the city of Tallinn. This is now all through detail plan. We're missing just the last area, which is the one you see here. Other projects that are very recognizable, airports in Beijing. I think this one is what we call the star. So this is like I think it's a 56 million capacity terminal. It's a third airport in Beijing. It was built extremely fast. Now they're doubling that. So they're literally mirroring the star on the opposite side. And it's all about, again, yes, it's a recognizable and iconic sort of image, but what was driving this is the efficiency of the star solution, which is actually driven by the maximum length that people can walk without having to take a shuttle. So that gives you the constraint of the length of the building. The numbers is driven by, of course, constraint on number of airplanes and the capacity that you need to cater for. And the use of natural light to have intuitively navigation through the space. So those are what generated this vision, this design for this project. So again, natural light, how much you can walk without needing a shuttle, how many gates do you need, and how can you compact them in an efficient way, always closer to the center, where you can go down and just get out into the public transport system. So Western Sydney Airport, a similar brief, completely different answer. This is about, again, highly sustainable agenda. How do we use that to actually define the design into this sort of canopy that it's a double layer timber and metal structures that is allowing for natural light, comfort levels, and at the same time creates a very iconic presence. I think I'm going to, it's okay, I can continue. I'm almost done. Other interesting projects, infrastructure to me is very important. I really like infrastructure as a theme, because I think has a lot of opportunities. Of course, it's a public transport. It's a way people move through space. They connect through infrastructure, and also has the opportunity to become a lot more than just a functional solution. It should really aim to become something which strives for, again, creating a destination, uplifting the possibilities of regeneration of areas. So I really love that typology itself. This one is in Oslo, and it's on site as we speak. This whole concept is about creating this sort of glacier vaulted ceilings. This is actually a bit old. Now we are complete with all the foundations. In Tallinn, we're doing another station that's also on site. So we just finished, completed the platform level, the whole underside, and the walkway passage that you see there. And again, even in this project, it's about representing the idea of a movement. We needed to have two connections, one above, one below. We wanted to create something where you always have visual connectivities and you feel safe. This triggers redevelopment on both sides of the railway tracks, which most of the time are perceived as a division, as a barrier in the urban context. So all of this is what generates, again, this vision, this design. In Vilnius, we have a beautiful design for the new railway station and overall square and bus terminal in front of it. And this is the same. We are striving to use this to create public connections, to really be able to regenerate both sides of the railway tracks, to create something which is going to be a new sort of destination for the city, not only for the people that use the station, but also for the people that want to commute from the two different sides, for people that want to appreciate this whole idea of movement and transport. We really want to create something more than just a functional solution. And I think that's when the quality and the opportunity of such a big project can really uplift the local communities around it. And also create something which is very recognizable, something that is becoming a new sort of icon, a new landmark in the city of Vilnius, which is already very rich of landmarks. And I think it would be very interesting to see how this could complement the offering that is already there. We're doing other projects as well. This is on site as well. Inspiration is, of course, the sort of roofscape of the immediate sort of presence of this brutalist building that we use to generate this articulation of the balconies. So the same idea, again, is not so immediate, but is also very legible. I mean, you can see that there is references. Once you see it, it's very difficult to unseen it afterwards. And this is, again, something that we're very proud of, that we take something which is an inspiration of a context, of, as I said, of a brief, of a technology, of a limitation, and we transform that into the design language that we use. And I think this is the last one I'll show you today. We recently won the new terminal in Riga. So it's a new ferry terminal with commercial components as well. And I think it's been extremely well received. It was a competition that we participated. We were not actually invited in the competition, so they invited two different architects, and we participated anyway, and we won the project because they really loved the way we resolved an existing building structure, because that's an old warehouse, so you have concrete structure inside, but we resolved that, creating something yet that looked like a ferry terminal, but at the same time it's something that really works with an efficient plans of circulation, because ferry terminals are always very difficult to understand in terms of the crossing of arrivals and departure, different type of flows, and we really optimized that into the project with a linear lobby that connects the commercials and the public, as well as the function of the terminal. So by using that, we created something that is a very efficient ferry terminal, use the existing structure of the building, but also is a very efficient solution for creating a destination that is used not only when you have the boats, which is basically 3 hours a day, every other day, if not even every day, but is a destination for the new surrounding areas, which is part now of a big redevelopment. So again, creating something that anchored, that becomes a new focal point for a wider regeneration. More than what we asked for. That's, let's say, what we deliver. And I think that's why it was so well received. And I think I'll stop here. Otherwise, I have another presentation if you have more time. We can go through that. Thank you.